Coming down to the MDG 2, enrollment in primary education in developing regions has reached 91%. Although primary school enrollment has increased significantly across all nations, completion rates are still low. Okay, so there is another like a catch. Like if you go into the details, like you notice it now. Okay, so the enrollment, that means registration, for like a primary education has reached to the 91%. Okay, but how many are actually passing like a this education, that percentage is still like low. That means even after registration, this like a number of registration, like the number of students who are continuing the study is getting like a decreased. Okay, so that's not the like a encouraging situation, because with all the like resources, infrastructure, like falling in place, if they are not able to graduate, okay, that means all of those efforts are not actually bearing the like a full fruit. Okay, so how this can further be improved and brought exactly to this number? Okay, as many are registering, those many are exiting also. That should be the like a target, and this should, of course, from 91% this should go to the 100%, and here also on this side 100%. Okay, so the challenge is at the implementation level, how will this be done? And far too many kids do not complete the whole education cycle from early life development through secondary school graduation. There are still 800 million individuals who are chronically undernourished, who lack access to enough food that is nutritious and safe. The State of Food Insecurity in the World 2015 reports that another billion or so people suffer from various types of micronutrient deficiencies. For these regions, the SDGs pledge to eradicate extreme poverty in all of its manifestations, including hunger, and demand that by 2030 everyone have access to basic infrastructure and social services. The expansion of basic school access in developing countries has made tremendous progress. The percentage of students enrolled increased from 83% to 90% between 2000 and 2011. So a 7% increase, and the number of children not in school decreased by almost half. That's encouraging, from 102 million in 2000 to 57 million in 2011. All MDGs will be impacted by improvements in education. So if you see, this number has almost decreased to half, but still 57 million, that means 5 crore 70 lakh, 250 million youngsters worldwide still struggle to read and write after 4 years of primary age schooling. That means the question on quality education, because just education is not enough. This education should be able to reach and meet its like objective, its own like a target. So that means quality education. That's why if you see the SDGs, like that name is quality education, because this like effort, this investment must bear the fruit. If the kids are not able to read and write after 4 years of primary schooling, okay, that's not actually like encouraging, rather it's discouraging, because all like 4-year worth of like investment and like a dedication and the efforts are not bearing the real fruits the way like they should, right? So the foundation for all subsequent learning is significantly weakened without these core skills. Simply attending class is insufficient. Okay, definitely. Learning improvement is essential. Early school exit is still prevalent. 34 million of the 137 million kids who started first grade in 2011 are projected to drop out before finishing primary school. 34 million worldwide. It is projected that they are going to like a dropout before finishing their primary schooling. That's a very huge like a number, because these people who are going to like a drop out from their schooling even before completing it, they are going to like face a lot of like harsh realities and challenges for earning their livelihood. They may not be able to like equip themselves to different like skills and education and other like skill sets where they can make use of on their livelihood and contribute to the society. Rather, they may be forced to go for some other like a unorganized kind of like a things, not so like a happy kind of like a practices and things, and they may become a burden also on the society, right? So it's a collective responsibility of all of us to reduce this figure to zero. This amounts to a 25% early school exits rate, which is the same as it was in 2000. Rise in literacy rates between 1990 and 2011, the regions with the largest increases in youth literacy rates were Northern Africa from 68% to 89%, and Southern Asia from 60 to 81%, where gender disparity is reduced. The three main causes of children not attending schools are poverty, gender, and place of residence. 3 times as many children and teenagers from low-income families miss school as those from high-income families. 3 times. Low-income families, kids are vulnerable to miss the school compared to the high-income families. Well, I'm surprised even high school, like high-income families, kids, they also miss the school for some reason. Even in the wealthiest homes, girls are most likely than boys to not be in school. Worldwide, 123 million young people between the age of 15 and 24 lack the fundamental skills of reading and writing. 61% of them are young women. As international aid to basic education declined in 2011 for the first time since 2002, progress in lowering the number of out-of-school children has come to a standstill. The likelihood of hitting the 2015 aim has been jeopardized by the stagnant pace and aid cuts. Well, this should not happen actually. Although the world has made great strides in lowering child mortality since the MDGs were adopted, 6 million kids still die each year from preventable causes. In most countries, maternal death rates have decreased, but not by enough to achieve the MDG. Major efforts are required to guarantee that everyone has access to the most basic infrastructure such as energy, water, sanitary facilities, and transportation. Many people do not have access to inexpensive primary health care. High disparities in access to secondary and tertiary education still exist. Though girls still face disadvantages in Western and Southern Asia, significant progress has been made in decreasing the gender gap in secondary school. The biggest disparities can be found in higher education. Only 77 girls for every 100 boys attend tertiary education in Southern Asia. That means 23 are not there. The worst case scenarios is found in sub-Saharan Africa, where the enrollment gender gap increased from 66 girls for every 100 boys in 2011 to 61 females for every 100 boys in 2011. Uneven access to education, particularly for girls in secondary school age, is mostly caused by poverty. In many regions of the world, women and girls are compelled to spend countless hours carrying water, and girls frequently choose not to attend school due to a lack of adequate sanitary facilities. So if you see this, like a lack of sanitary facilities is one of the very practical, compelling, and a tormenting, you can say, is a like a lack of service, because of which girl students miss the schooling. The impediments to education include child marriage and abuse against women. Additionally, girls with disabilities are less likely to attend school. Like even girls and even boys with the like a disability, they are further prone to like not reaching to the like a proper education like a system. Many girls stop attending school once they become pregnant. Of course, this brings a lot of like a new responsibilities of taking care of the newly born and all of that. Okay, which definitely kills the opportunity or like the things what the same girl student was going to like avail in her life in the future. right? So bringing her own like a personal growth and development to a complete like a stop. So definitely this is not desirable. We must like deal with this. Boosted by quota system, women are becoming increasingly powerful in parliamentary bodies around the world. Globally, the proportion of women in parliament increased sharply in 2012, rising from 19.6%, earlier it used to be at this percentage, at the start of the year to 20.4% at the end. A remarkable annual growth of nearly 1 percentage point, but still well short of gender parity. So this should be ideally be at 50-50, like a percent. Okay, but some improvement even in that. Progress for women is still mostly driven by affirmative action. The majority of the above average rise was caused by the implementation of either mandated or optional quotas in 22 of the 48 nations where elections were held in 2012. When quotas were mandated, women occupied 24% of parliamentary seats. Where they were voluntary, they held 22% of seats. Although they are making progress on the employment market, women still frequently hold less secure positions in underdeveloped countries. Between 1990 and 2010, women's proportion of paid employment outside the agriculture sector climbed gradually from 35 to 40%. However, it is still less than 20% in Western Asia, Northern Africa, and Southern Asia. Even when taking into account education and skill level, women still enter the labor market at a lower rate than the men. They frequently work in precarious jobs with little to no financial security or social benefits, especially in Western Asia and Northern Africa, where there are few paid options for women. Women hold barely 25% of top managerial positions globally. So if you see the representation of women, and the pay conditions for the same work compared to their male counterparts and other things there's still like you see a lot of disparities in them, right? So this is where we discuss the reduced inequalities SDG, where all sorts of like a such like a discrepancies and like a deliberate like a keeping them like a low and all of those kind of like a usual practices which are coming down from the past years must stop, and it should like a become like a equal. Coming down to the SDG MDG 4. Since 1990, improvements in child survival have been developed, allowing for an increase in child survival for upcoming generations from 90 deaths per 1000 live births in 1990 to 48 in 2012. So from 90 to 48, there also we can say like almost like half from the previous. The mortality rate for children under 5 decreased globally by 47%. Despite this success, faster development is required to reach the 2015 goal of a 2/3 decrease in under 5 mortality. The estimated 6.6 million children who died in 2012, 18,000 a day. So you can see like this huge number, 18,000 deaths per day. That's a humongous number, it's really saddening. Mostly from diseases that could have been avoided. Again, like a heart-wrenching, like a region, these, like a diseases, these conditions could have been avoided by, like some effort, but they could not be. And 18,000 per day, children, died, like during this time. These youngsters frequently rank among the most disadvantaged and destitute in society. Child deaths are becoming more concentrated in the poorest areas. Of the 6.6 million deaths of children under 5 worldwide, 5.3 million, 81%, occurred in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. So you can see the most impacted regions in the world. Pneumonia, complications associated with preterm birth, diarrhea, issues connected to intrapartum and malaria are the leading deaths. The most perilous period of a child's existence is the first month, and especially the first 24 hours. Nearly half, 44% of deaths in children under the age of 5 now include newborns. So you see these numbers the crucial like hours and like days of a newly born, the first 24 hours, and then first month, first 6 months, and the first like a year. So how crucial like they can be. In addition, 45% of all deaths in children under the age of 5 are related to undernutrition. For the first 6 months of life, infants who are exclusively breastfed have a 14 times higher chance of surviving than those who are not. So breastfeeding is one of the highly advised like a things from the medical fraternity, from all the medical bodies, starting from WHO to MCI and all of them. Okay, they all recommend like a breastfeeding to the newly born like a child, because like a mother's milk, the first milk which like a mother provides to the newly born kid carries life saving like a compounds and nutrients, and they are very essential and cannot be given like those same like compounds you cannot supplement through other like a supplementary like a products available in the market or from like other sources. Okay, so one must actually strive for giving the like a mother's milk. That's a fact for all of you. Please note it down. Many nations with high child mortality rates in 1990 are defying the odds and reducing under 5 mortality rates, demonstrating that progress for all children is possible despite obstacles. Since 1990, the under 5 mortality rates in Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Liberia, Malawi, Nepal, Timor-Leste, and United Republic of Tanzania have decreased by at least 2/3. Most impacted countries on this front. Okay, MDG 5. Maternal mortality ratio fell by 45% since 1990. Maternal mortality has declined by nearly half since 1990, while progress falls short of achieving MDG 5 by the 2015 deadline. All regions have made important gains. Globally, the ratio declined from 400 maternal deaths per 1 lakh live births in 1990 to 210 in 2010. Still, meeting the MDG target of reducing maternal mortality by 3/4 will require accelerated efforts and stronger political backing for women and children. Only 44% of births in rural and 75% of urban regions of developing nations were attended by trained workers in 1990. By 2011, only 53% of newborns in rural areas and 84% of births in urban areas were attended by experienced birth attenders. So you can see even in the urban areas, there are 16% like newborns who were not attended by like birth attenders, like a medical practitioners, medical like a professionals. And in the rural, if you see, there's huge like a number. Okay, only 53, that means 47% were not attended by like attenders. Maybe you can call it as like a half. 47 million births without professional assistance occurred globally in 2011. Reducing maternal mortality requires education for females. In comparison to women with more than 12 years of education, the risk of maternal mortality is 2 times greater for those with 1 to 6 years of education and 2.7 times higher for those with no education. MDG 6. Between 2000 and 2013, new HIV infections fell by 40%. In most areas, the prevalence of HIV is dropping. Between 2001 to 12, there were 33% fewer persons newly infected with HIV globally. Nevertheless, 2.3 million new cases of HIV infection occur annually. With 1.6 million of these cases occurring in sub-Saharan Africa alone, the MDG goal of slowing and starting to stop the spread of HIV has been achieved. So if you see like like this like African this thing, so the first like this half like the region is again like highly infested by like this HIV. In addition, a record 9.7 million HIV positive individuals received treatment in 2012, up from just over 8.1 million in 2011, rise of 1.6 million in only 1 year. Between 2000 and 2010, there were an estimated 26% fewer malaria fatalities worldwide. The 10 nations with greatest malaria burden accounted for more than half of the 1.1 million lives averted. between 1991 and 2011, the death rate, from tuberculosis, TB, one of the again, very common disease in the older times and used to kill, like people in large numbers, it dropped by 41%. Nevertheless, 1.4 million people died from TB in 2011. 14 lakh, including 4,30,000 HIV positive individuals also in this. A significant global concern is multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. So now this condition, is becoming, you can say, as a, like a multi-drug resistant. So that's another catastrophic situation, before the humanity. What do you do when your medicines don't work? The number of instances being diagnosed is rising, but the rate at which patients are receiving treatment is too sluggish. In disease 7, 2.6 billion people have gained access to improved drinking water since 1990. From 1990 to 2011, 1.9 billion people, or more than 240,000 per day, had access to latrines, toilets and other types of improved sanitation facilities. The region that has made the most improvement is Eastern Asia, where sanitation coverage rose from 27% in 1990 to 67% in 2011. So, proper sanitation is also essential for, like a waterborne diseases. So, water and sanitation are so interconnected, right? Because the sources of, like a water supply in such places, is most likely to be infested by, this sanitation, like affluents, right? And that is definitely going to cause, like a diseases to the person who drinks, that water, again resulting into deteriorated, like a health condition and all of those, like a negative things. To add another billion individuals to this total globally by 2015, however, a significant effort is required. Stopping open defecation, a behavior that puts entire communities at risk for major health and environmental issues, is essential to advancing sanitation. So open defecation, if you see, like government of India also launched like this massive like exercise over the like several decades, and now with the introduction of like millions of like new toilets built for the families in like a challenging like a places. Okay, now this problem is almost coming to a close, and I'm sure very soon it will be completely over. Slums are home to an estimated 863 million people in the developing globe. More than 200 million slum residents acquired access to better water, sanitation and long-lasting, less congested housing between 2000 and 2010, exceeding the MDG objective of 100 million slum residents' quality of life by twice that amount. Conditions improved to the extent that an extra 44 million individuals were no longer regarded as living in slums between 2010 and 12 alone. Even though the MDG slum objective has been met, the sheer number of slum inhabitants is still rising, in part because of how quickly cities are developing. If you see, cities are developing and developing like like anything, what they used to be like like in the older times, multifold, they have increased and their footprint is rising and rising. Well, many of these parts are like a nicely developed plan and properly developed with all of the infrastructure and facilities, but it's not the same with the like all of the parts of the city, right? There are still like some pockets where the situation is very challenging, right? If you see the very famous like Dharavi slum in the heart of the Bombay, okay, is situated in the heart of the Bombay, but still if you visit that place, a lot of people like face like a different like a conditions, they may or may not be like economically like that like under the BPL or so, but living conditions are still not very like encouraging. Okay, so of course it requires like improvement on many other fronts. Over the years, if you see, it has grown into its own like a economic hub. If you visit like Dharavi, that slum area, okay, it has its own flourishing economic model, where like lakhs and lakhs of people, men, women, they are working for like lots of like things, okay, which is an integral part of the like economic commercial like city of India, that is Mumbai. To improve the lives of the urban poor in cities and metropolises throughout the developing globe, more robust targeted initiatives are required. All the greater areas of land and the ocean are protected. Numerous species of birds, mammals and other animals are rapidly approaching extinction. Okay, so the side effects, if you see, this is one of the like side effects where it is leading to extinction of several species of flora and fauna. The expansion of protected areas devoted to preserving and protecting biological variety and natural resources has advanced significantly. Currently, 14.6% of Earth's land area is under protection, while marine protection in coastal seas has increased by more than twice that amount since 1990, from 4.6% to 9.7%. At the same time, species are going extinct at an ever-increasing rate, and decreased biodiversity will have negative effects on the ecosystem services that are necessary for everyone to live. Despite the introduction of laws and policies promoting sustainable forest management in many nations, forests are vanishing quickly. South America saw the biggest net loss of forests, losing over 3.6 million hectares year from 2005 to 10. So in just these 5 years worth of time, 36 lakh hectares like a land was actually has actually lost its like a forest cover, right? So well, for like if you see like South America, it is like definitely its own like continental loss, but if you see, it's a loss for the like a whole world, because we know like Amazon as one of the like a most like a friendly like a lungs of the planet, right? Since forests offer food, water, wood, fuel and other resources that are used by millions of the world's poorest people, deforestation is not only a severe danger to attaining sustainability but also to advancements towards reducing hunger and poverty and establishing sustainable livelihoods. Global marine fish populations are currently below the point where they can deliver the highest sustainable yields. The ongoing growth of the fishing industry in several nations has led to the overfishing of more species. Since 1986, the Montreal Protocol has caused a 98% decrease in the uses of chemicals that deplete the ozone layer. 98% decrease in those like chemicals that cause actually like a ozone hole since 1986. Since the majority of these compounds are greenhouse gases, the protocol helps safeguard the Earth's climate system. The success of the Montreal Protocol has established a standard of effective climate change mitigation, and it's one of the great successful stories. Since 1990, carbon dioxide emissions have climbed by almost 46% globally, with a 5% increase between 2009 and 10. Global emission growth surged, increased by 33% between 2000 and 10. This expansion must be contained, and this requires bold, coordinated national and international action, of course. Coming down to the 8th is MDG 8. In 2014, aid money increased to 132.2 billion US dollars. The environment for commerce with developing and least developed nations keep getting better. As a percentage of global trade, developing countries increased to 44.4% in 2012. In 2011, the average tariffs imposed on developing nations by affluent nations kept falling. Since 2000, debt service ratios have decreased by 25%, easing the financial load on developing nations. The cost of debt service has decreased thanks to improved debt management, more trade, and significant debt relief for the world's poorest nations. The effects of ongoing global financial crisis and unrest in the Eurozone are still being felt through official development assistance. ODA totaled 126 billion US dollars in 2012, which was 4% less in actual terms than 2011 and 2% less than in 2010. ODA hasn't decreased in 2 straight years since 1996 to 97, so this is a historic development. Aid is becoming more and more concentrated in a select few nations out of 159 nations and territories. The top 20% recipients in 2011 received roughly 55% of all ODA, an increase from 38% in 2010. Cellular subscriptions for mobile devices are getting closer to saturation. By the end of 2013, 6.8 billion mobile cellular subscribers are expected, resulting in a 96% global penetration rate. Growing at 12% in 2013 compared to 5% in wealthy countries, the number of people utilizing the internet in developing nations continues to surpass that in developed nations. As of 2013, there were 65% of internet users worldwide, up from 40% in 2005. So if you see like this, like an internet connection, like that, the number of users is also tremendously increasing. These users are primarily located in developing nations. Although it is becoming more accessible and more affordable, broadband internet is still out of reach in many poor nations. Well, basic internet is available, but again, it talks about like a broadband, that is still a challenge for many connection holders. Prices for critical medications were on average 3.3 times higher in public sector facilities in low and lower middle income nations and 5.7 times higher in private sector facilities than international reference prices. Only 57% of public sector facilities and 65% of private facilities in a few underdeveloped nations have access to essential medications. Now I am coming to the point 2, topic 2, applying the principles of equality and non-discrimination in social protection systems. So what could be the like standards of accessibility, affordability, adaptability and gender sensitivity? Okay, so we will see the first one, accessibility. Social protection programs must be accessible to all. Obstacles such as lack of information and physical and administrative barriers that prevent the most excluded or disadvantaged groups in society from accessing social protection programs on an equal basis with the rest of the population must be removed. Affordability. Social protection programs must be economically accessible to all. The processes of registering with a social protection program, collecting its benefits or submitting a complaint should not be costly. There is a financial barrier when the monetary cost of registering with a program or receiving payment services are comparatively higher than the benefits. Further point, adaptability. Social protection programs must be adapted to the varying needs of the population that they are trying to reach and take into account local context and lived experiences. Barriers related to cultural values, like example indigenous peoples, and technological challenges, example when social protection programs use electronic methods of payment or biometric systems, require particular attention. Gender sensitivity. Social protection programs must take into account the many forms of discrimination that women face, ensuring that they are able to benefit from the programs on an equal basis with men. This includes ensuring that gendered social norms and patriarchal attitudes do not impede women benefiting from the specific program. Particular attention should be paid to the many forms of discrimination that can emerge as the intersection of gender with age, race, class, disability, and other factors. Touching the third point, our common features and philosophy behind SDGs. So if you see how things have evolved, over the time, these are the like 8 MDGs we just now saw, and 17 SDGs on the other hand. And definitely in the year 2030, there will be like another improved like a framework. We don't know yet what that would be like, what name it's going to carry, but yes, overall like a progression, it must like go on and on and on. So the some key points we saw previously: involving people, prosperity, peace, partnership and planet. Okay, the 5 P's for sustainable development. And what is the shared like a value system over here, which comes at the periphery of these two, social values and financial values. So increase in employment options for youth, linkages to private sector for the youths creating market relevant enterprises, financial inclusion in the market, positive attitude to agriculture, vocational training and savings, thriving communities, low level of violences and domestic abuses and things like that. And the financial value, leveraging other partner skills and areas of expertise, learning and product improvements, pragmatic changes and innovation, capacity building, access to new market segments and supply chains, increase in revenue, improve buyer relations. So, as per the data from the year 2019, you can see Sustainable Development Index ratings based on this legend. India, we are at this level. So with this, we have come to the end of this lecture. Thank you all.